Welcome to another edition of Facebook Live, the KWSM Help Desk. I'm Jeff Soto. I'm joined by Alexandra Hall.
Hello.
And Tiffany Lundberg.
Hello.
And I'm just going to put this out there. If we start spontaneously coughing, it's because we had some ghost pepper popcorn in here, and everybody is hacking up now.
Yeah.
It was very spicy.
It was all Jeff's fault.
But we're gonna. It is. It's always my fault. If something goes wrong here, it's my fault. But we're gonna spice up your marketing in 2020. Yeah, it's a great segue, huh? We're gonna spice up your marketing. We're gonna talk about, right now is a busy time for us right now.
Yep.
We are onboarding a lot of clients. A lot of clients are looking forward to their 2020 marketing strategies, and I think one of the things we're going to cover two things in depth. We're going to cover video, what to do for your video needs in 2020 for your branding, and we're going to cover Instagram because you have to start somewhere socially, and Instagram is seemingly the platform that everyone wants to get on. They know about Facebook. Facebook owns Instagram, but there's something about Instagram where businesses feel like they're connecting with real people better. But before we dive into that, let's talk a little bit about everything we do for clients and how really strategies now need to be more of these all-encompassing of efforts. And you really can't put your eggs in any one basket. And I think of a client you manage a city client here in Orange County, and we're doing social, we're doing newsletters, we're doing blogging, a lot of storytelling. We've done video, multiple video. We're putting it all together, and I think that's what makes it different. And so just, let's spend 10, 15 minutes just talking about kind of overall strategies. What do we see? Alexandra, I'll start with you because you oversee the web and video team and teams, and those are a big component in that all-encompassing strategy.
Yeah, that's something we have to look at every time we're looking at someone who's coming in and needs to get their marketing out there, is that you have to remember that somebody's going to Google you and they're going to land somewhere, and that's going to be your website. Katie says this all the time about how your website is your credibility piece. Meanwhile, your social is going to be your authenticity piece. And so that credibility really needs to be established on your website. And that's going to be, you're the expert of what? It's your industry. It's either your products that you're selling. Whatever it is, you are going to be the expert there. And you need to give that education to the people who are coming and visiting your site. And so we look at that. We look at it and go, okay, if I landed on your website, is that something that's going to tell me what I need to know up front? And sometimes it could use some help. Sometimes there's some messaging. Or sometimes, like, one of the things we'll talk about is, maybe 2020 looks different for your next year. Like, maybe your marketing is changing, or maybe your industry is changing, or maybe you have different passions and you're shifting the way you're going. And so sometimes that's a reason to look at your website too. So I really look at that. I really see it. And then also the other thing is SEO. It's changing constantly. And this kind of goes along with the way, there's no one size fits all when it comes to, your social and how you're doing your marketing. And you probably need to touch on multiple levels. And it's the same thing for SEO. It's not just put these keywords in and it'll fix your problem. It's, okay, are you using the right keywords? Do you have meta tags? Are you searching the right thing? Are you adding blogs regularly? Like, all of that plays into it. And so evaluating how people are going to find you is really important.
Yeah, discoverability. I think that's the biggest thing, and we see it on the website with that stuff, and we also see it on the social side. And so walk us through a little bit about how you see like a comprehensive social strategy to really reach and engage all the audiences differently.
Well, you mentioned that one of my clients is a city here in Orange County, so I'll use them as an example. They're on a lot of different platforms. We use Twitter mainly for breaking news types of things, so people know what's going on around the city, if there's a landslide, if there's road work going on. So that is a way to keep people informed. Facebook, you can have a little more fun because, as we know, Twitter mainly relies on text. So Facebook it's visual and it relies on text. So we're able to put links to blogs that we've done. We're able to post a picture and write a fun little story. And we see that we get a lot of engagement with people when we're telling stories about real people in the community, real people in that community. Then, of course, the blogs, as I mentioned, we do put links to the blogs to drive them back to our webpage where those blogs live. But a lot of the stories that we have seen that are very successful are stories about people in the community and the things that they're doing. And so it's a way of relating to the person. You know, people relate to people. Mm-hmm. So we like to incorporate those types of things as well. Then of course Instagram is a very visual platform. We're talking about Facebook is visual and relies on text. Twitter mainly relies on text. Instagram, very, very visual. So we're picking out the best pictures and the best videos to really capture people's attention.
And we don't want to give away too much of what you're going to talk about later, but we do see that, yeah, each platform kind of has its own way of connecting with people, and the users' habits change from channel to channel, and it's, Facebook's kind of catching up with the world and seeing what's happening, and Twitter's that immediacy, and Instagram is kind of that lighthearted, fun, kind of entertaining, and YouTube can be instructional or educational, because there's a lot more in-depth video content there. So using your channels wisely, and then even to step back, and you I think you're mentioning this in Instagram, the hashtags work on certain channels that not, and LinkedIn has been trying to get more people to use a hashtag, and they'll send you notifications. Hey, this topic and this hashtag is trending right now. You represent these clients, jump into these conversations. So LinkedIn's trying to stimulate conversation differently than I think it's ever been on that channel. Certainly Twitter and Instagram are the more hashtagable platforms, and then Facebook not so really. And then, and I know you've experienced this with a couple of different of your brands, and we see this just across a lot of the user-generated content. It brings this piece of authenticity to your brand, that it really shows that you're building a relationship with your customers. And I'll start with you, Tiffany, just talking about UGC, and that's, user-generated content, UGC. So a lot of times we say UGC and people don't know what the hell we're talking about, right? So, it's, but it's valuable because it really creates this relationship there that allows the user or the audience in, and then they feel that they're part of the circle. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it does, because we talk about engagement is so important, and engagement being whether or not people are liking or loving, doing all those fun things on your post, or they're commenting. So when users see that you're using their pictures and telling their stories, they're more invested in your product or your business, and they trust you, they're invested, and so we find that we get a lot more engagement that way. And then of course there are people that send us pictures. They'll message us and say, hey, here's a picture of my daughter, and you can ask a couple questions and you have a cute little story, and a lot of people will relate to those kinds of things versus just say if you're a food company, just a picture of food. They'd rather see someone eating the food and hear a little bit about their story.
Yeah, and I know video, socially, we'll talk about video for websites and your brand, but video is prioritized by the platforms, and it certainly catches people's attention easier. And I know we saw with one of our clients recently, a video had dozens of shares that we reposted from somebody else, that we pulled that. And so really finding and mining the content. I think most people go in creating content, going into their content strategy thinking, oh man, they freak out. Oh man, we've got to create all this stuff. How are we going to do it? And it's really about, let's be relatable. What are people talking about that we like just as much as the audience likes? And video has that ability to capture so much more emotion than a still or a text.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that we like to talk about a lot, especially when I'm meeting with someone who's considering doing video with us and they want some help, is that I like to point out that this is someone's first interaction with you. And so they can actually see your gait of speech and how you gesture, and they get really comfortable. So when they do meet you, they're not it's not a blind date. They know what they're looking at, they know who they're going to, and they can hear it. And even people who are that's actually a really good idea. I love the dating apps. Is you see a picture and then you meet them in person, you're like, oh no, it's totally different. They may not look any different, but the way that you interact with them. And so it's the same thing. Think of it as you're kind of courting your clients to come to you and talk to you, and video is the way of showing off who you are and what you do best, and how you're so smart about what you do best, because you are, and also having other people tell your story. That's when you get the testimonials in there. That's when you hear from your clients who can then say, hey, look, no, seriously, this person is really as good as they say they are, and here's why, and here's what they did for me. And so video tells all of the stories, but there's also fun ones. We've done really fun event videos that we've done, and I think something we all keep saying is, it's telling a story. It's literally on our logo behind us. telling a story is the most important part of it, and then remember that that video can be shared literally everywhere, and it's going to get all that good content out there for people.
I love your analogy. I totally see a blog topic of like how not to have your audience swipe left or right. I don't know what's the bad thing, but how not to have them swipe left on your brand, because you have such a little window, a small window to make that impression. And I know, you only get one chance to make a first impression, or whatever that phrase.
Something like
You don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
That's
I mean, sometimes you do, but like really, it's having that presentable presence, if that makes sense, so that when someone lands on your page, they do feel like they're engaged. And I know you working on it day to day and seeing that in content, it makes a big difference what you do as a total strategy for branding.
It really does. I mean, I've learned so much the longer I work with different clients. You learn, I mean, everyone is different. So you learn what works for them may not work for someone else, or vice versa. Like what works for them does work for other people. So it's just been really interesting.
And I think we can kind of shift to this video conversation
Sure.
now. A lot of times when you're out with brands and you're making videos, I mean, we do that recommendation of this should be the first thing people see when they get to your site. That 1.5 to 2.5 minute piece, maybe longer sometimes, that they hear you, they see what you do, and it takes it to another dimension of just words on a page with an image.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk us, the audience, through a little bit
Sure.
about how to prioritize video, how to make it something that is a focal point of your brand, and then we can even chop it into how to use it socially before we get into the Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that if you've never done video before and you want to get video content out there, I have like my 4 main ones that I go to. It's going to be, tell me about your brand. If somebody wants to know what you're doing, explain it to me. Give me your pitch and let's talk about it. So that'll be one video. That's your about video. We always recommend putting that on the homepage of your website. It's the best place to put it. We want it really high up on that page. It's going to give people like to listen, people like to watch. It's that human connection thing. You can see a face and you're like, oh, perfect, I want to see this. The second one we like to do is tell us a little bit about your services specifically. What do you do? How do you handle it? What is somebody going to, how are they going to interact with you the first time? So I kind of like walk through, like, tell me your sales process. If it's something that you're offering as a service, or if it's a product, then you're going to talk about why your product does what it does and why it's cool. That would be the second one. The third one, it's going to be, this one's my favorite topic because people don't like doing it, but I love it, is brag about yourself.
Yeah.
Tell me why you're better. And this is something we ask all the time is, what do you do better than what sets you apart? And it always makes people a little bit uncomfortable because they don't really want to brag, but I'm like, no, this is exactly the time to brag. Tell me what you do better. That one's really fun. And then usually something that's anecdotal, like a case study or a story of how you helped someone or a story of how your product did really well for, what it was supposed to do. So those are my 4 starters, and those are the ones that I think everyone should have. It's a lot easier than you think it is to do video. Everybody gets really nervous. I'm very fortunate to be someone who can ramble forever, and it doesn't bother me, and I'm not afraid.
That's why we're sitting here.
I know, I'm not. You'll see me a lot in these because I don't mind doing it. But I walk people through it, and so it's okay. That's the first leap you want to get over. Is it's not as scary as you think it is, and especially if you have someone who is helping you professionally get through it, they're going to make you look good. That's the goal. So keeping that in mind, you want to think forward to 2020, and this is how you should consider putting video and how you're going to strategize with video in 2020. Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Everybody's going to have different needs that they have, but the first thing you want to do is evaluate what your goals are for 2020. That's going to be overall business goals. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Is it how many, of a product are you going to sell? How many clients are you going to bring in every month, or whatever that is? Establish what your goals are, because video is going to also support that. The next thing you want to do is really look at what is going to make you feel successful with these videos. So is it, for example, we give an example in a blog about it, is okay, we have a video that got 1,000 views in this past year. Okay, we want it to be 3,000 in the next year. That can be a goal. That just says, okay, that many more people are seeing it, and that's important, and it's more for the next year. And then the most fun part is you want to craft a story. So you look at what your goals are, you look at how you want to see that interaction or see that goal met, and you say, okay, great, how can I tell a cool story about this? And people sometimes have a hard time with it because sometimes maybe you think your subject is obvious to you, like there's people who are like, geniuses in their, engineers, for example. I will never understand engineers. Like, I'm going to give that as an example because my brain does not work that way. And so some people, if you're an engineer, you're like, yeah, of course, that's how it works. Well, tell me that story because I want to hear it. I want to hear what you're doing and why it's important. And maybe you're a civil engineer and like there's so many cool stories. There's a TED Talk actually about a civil engineer and talking about how community spaces are really important and very specific, and so that's a story. You could tell those stories. And so crafting those stories around how smart you are, obviously, educating people on what you do, telling us how you got started and why you're passionate about it, like creating those stories is really going to be the thing that's going to help set you apart too. And then one that people don't like talking about is budget. You need to set a budget for your video. We often recommend quarterly videos and to clients, especially for throughout the year, because it continues to keep fresh information out there. And it's pretty easy, especially if you're writing blogs, you have topics to talk about. Or one of my other favorite things to do is, okay, we're doing quarterly ones. What are your top 5 most asked questions? And each video gets its own question. And because we talk about this all the time, but YouTube is a huge search engine because it's Google's, and it's the second biggest one because it's Google's, and people will just search a question and see what comes up. I know I've done that a bunch. So we usually recommend quarterly videos. Going back to where I'm coming from here is the budget part of it is we do, but sometimes you may not have a budget for that often. Maybe set aside the money to do a really big one, but another thing people do is this is video. We're putting out a video right now. This isn't costing us anything to do other than our time and the phone, So this is a good way. You got to think of it that way too. Not every video has to be really high end because sometimes it is going to.
But our videos are not done with a phone. We just
our,
need to tell
our
you.
real videos, our video shoots are not done with a phone. But what I'm saying is if you're doing content and you're posting things on Facebook, like a Facebook Live is a perfectly acceptable way to do it.
Yeah.
Facebook likes it. It's going to prioritize that information. You have to think outside of the box when it comes to video content, because it doesn't have to just be, okay, I've spent a full day dressed up in front of a big bright light and a camera, but it could be other content, and there's people who get videos of the example, someone's going to send you pictures and video. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that video is something of someone's like at the beach at a surf competition or something, it's California, of course they are. Yeah. So.
Yeah, behind the scenes. We go visit clients and it's part of their normal routines. They don't ever think of taking videos or photos of it, right? And we go in there and like, oh wow, here's this process and here's this, and before we know it, we walk out there with a ton of videos. You can use this, and that's where it goes well on social. Video is great on social.
Oh, it definitely does, especially the quality of the cameras on some of these cell phones nowadays.
Yeah.
Like, you would never know that it was shot with a cell phone. I've seen some really amazing videos. But we can get those little videos, and whether or not they're 10 seconds or they're 30 seconds, and it's a fun moment or it's something cool going on in your warehouse, people love videos. I tend to see that they do very well. And you can post them with a fun little creative caption. And so it doesn't have to be this full-blown professional thing. It can be what's happening in your day, something that you think is cool. Probably other people are going to think is pretty neat as well.
Yeah, so there's a wide spectrum from the professional end that you would start on your website and then kind of migrate that down to social. And then there's the smartphone, take it, use it, upload it, go live like we are. And there's probably an in-between, and this is the shameless plug time.
I was going to say,
but
now
Video
it's my time.
Studio Day, Alexandra can talk about Video Studio Day, which is a great option for business owners that maybe they don't have the behind-the-scenes activity or they don't have the number of people to sit through, but they want that video presence for themselves. Why don't you talk about when, where, and what Video Studio Day is?
Yeah, so Video Studio Day is something that we do. It's every month in various locations. So once a quarter, there will always be one in Orange County, and once a quarter we also go to San Diego. And if you want one near you, we could probably work that out. But what it is you get a half-hour slot. It is a time where we either do interview style. So what I would do is I would talk to you, ask you questions, and you would answer to me. Or if you have a script that you want to write or you need help writing scripts, we do have a teleprompter so you can read directly off of it. But what Video Studio Day is meant to do is to be like an intro to video. If you maybe you don't have the budget to do a whole full day shoot or a half day shoot or whatever that may be, but you want something a little bit more polished than your phone, this is the perfect place to go. And also, if you've never done it before, this is a really easy way to do it. We walk you through it every step of the way. I'm the one who's there doing it with you. we will guide you to get you that starter video if that's where you're at. Or I have people who come in and do it quarterly with us because they know that they just need new content and they're like, cool, this is consistent. I'm gonna have the same kind of video, the same kind of quality every single time. So there is a lot of reasons and a lot of value in this. You get 4 videos out of it, usually somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute. They're pretty short and sweet. We brand them to you. You don't have to worry about that. It's got your logo, whatever your call to action needs to be, where we want to send them. You can find out about this more on our website under Video Studio Day. The next one in Orange County is going to be January 23rd. And so it's limited slots, so you want to get in there pretty quickly. So start off your January, your 2020 with new video.
It's good to hear that people keep coming back.
People
They're comfortable.
Yeah.
Easy, right?
It's really easy. It actually is. I have all kinds of, that's one of the questions I ask people afterwards is, okay, what did you think? How was it? Did you think it was easy? And overwhelmingly people tell me, they're like, oh yeah, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah, we get a lot of that feedback where they're maybe nervous leading up to it,
Yep.
and then after they're like, oh wow, that wasn't bad at all,
Yep.
and then they come back.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for walking us through
Sure.
video. It is a very important aspect, and it is used across all of your channels. Video on Instagram, you can use up to a minute, and you can cut that from there. You can source video, you can shoot it straight from your smartphone. You can do Instagram Live, but for the purposes of this conversation, you have up to a minute there, and that's good for those short
Yep.
little bits. And think about things like personal trainers, and think about who's using them in the sphere that you watch, where people talk about eating, people talk about exercise, people talk about tax tips, people talk money. It could be anything. We see people in all fields and industries doing their part
Yeah.
and recording that 30-second to 1 minute on their own, or using a service like ours to get in front of more people because they know that the channels prioritize that.
Yeah, that's another thing as far as planning for 2020 is thinking about what channels you're releasing all this stuff on, because it's going to change depending on where you're at. So,
Right.
because Instagram's a square, if you're looking at it in your feed, and it's different depending on where you're sharing. So think about where you're rolling those out and where you're most active.
And that's a good segue to our next conversation. We'll round out with, there are so many different areas you could start your digital marketing presence. We recommend identifying which channels to be on. You don't need to be on them all, especially if you don't have the bandwidth to manage them. That's certainly something that we do for our clients. We manage their social presence, their digital marketing presence. But you may just want to start off small. And if you've got a product, you're selling something, you're trying to put yourself out there more as an expert, Instagram's a great place to start. And Tiffany's going to kind of walk us through, like, how do you get started if you've never Instagrammed before and you've just created that account? What are the first steps?
It can be pretty overwhelming, as we mentioned. There's a bunch of different channels. So if it's not your business or it's not something you're really into, it can be hard to pinpoint which one to go to and where to start. But here's a couple interesting facts about Instagram. 1 billion people use Instagram every month. Instagram is the second most downloaded free app in the Apple Store after YouTube. We mentioned YouTube and how popular it is. So it's estimated that next year, 75% of US businesses will be on Instagram. So if you've been thinking about it, seems like this coming year, 2020, is the time. So here are a couple basic things to keep in mind before you get started. So you really want to think about your handle. And if you're not familiar with that, it's essentially your username. It's pretty basic. So if you're doing a personal Instagram account, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be your name. It doesn't have to be something that's associated with you. But if it's for your business, it is very important that you pick a handle that relates to your services. Mm-hmm. And then if you have other channels, you want to keep those handles consistent so people know how to reach you. If you haven't thought of one yet and you don't really know what to do, it's recommended to maybe go on a competitor's site and see what they're doing and see if it's been successful for them. So the next thing that you really want to think about is your bio. So it's pretty, self-explanatory. It's your biography. It's the first thing that people will see at the top of your profile page. So you're basically just explaining to people who you are, what your services are, why they should come to you. And it's also very important because on Instagram, so if you're familiar with Facebook, we know that you can post links to each post, but that's not how Instagram works. So you can post a link in your bio, oftentimes to something like your website, but you can't do it just anyone can't do it on individual posts. So that bio and having that link is very important if you want to drive traffic back to your website. So that's something that you really want to think about. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Instagram, I kind of explained this, so I won't go too in depth, but it's a very visual platform. So heavily reliant on the pictures, the types of videos, or the story that you're posting, not so much text-based. We're going to talk about a couple terms to know. So impressions, that's the amount, total number of times that your photo, video, or story has been seen. So it's going through someone's feed. So that's an important term to know if you're thinking about getting involved with Instagram. I also mentioned this earlier as well, though. Really what is important is the engagement.
Yeah.
So engagement is if someone's commenting, if you're interacting with them. When someone comments, it's great to comment back if you can. So you're keeping people engaged with you, or if they're liking your post. So those are kind of basically the terms of Instagram, things to think about when you're getting started. And I thought this was a fun fact, so I added this in as well. Did you know there are at least 1 million advertisers on Instagram? So, very important.
It's a place to be. And now that they've removed the likes, so you can't see the like count, that's to kind of level the playing field and remove the people out there that maybe were manipulating the system a little and having people like. But yeah, there are a lot of advertisers out there, and it's not right for everybody. Advertising, the channel you have to really think through, is this the right channel for my brand? And we can help you with that decision. And certainly products work well, but there are some that work better than others. We know skincare, makeup, hair care, those kinds of things work really well. Fitness works well. So there are certain industries that work better, but they're also very competitive as well. So
Right.
Awesome. Well, we hope that you learned a lot in this session. We appreciate any comments or feedback. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the post here when we post this video. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next Tuesday on KWSM Help Desk on Facebook Live.